உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபை சார்பாக எங்கள் காலை வணக்கங்கள். Good morning friends. We welcome each and every one to this important webinar on what Tamil Nadu needs, SICCIs policy recommendation. To start things first, I would now like to request Mr. A.R.R.M. Arun, President, Southern India Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to deliver his opening remarks. இந்த நிகழ்ச்சிக்கு ஆரம்பமாக திரு ஏஆர்ஆர்எம் அருண் அவர்கள், தலைவர், தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபை, அவரது வரவேற்புரையை வழங்குவார்கள். மிஸ்டர் அருண், ப்ளீஸ்.
வணக்கம். திரு T.M. Anbarasan, Honorable Minister for Rural Industries, Government of Tamil Nadu, distinguished speakers for today, and friends. On behalf of SICCI, we warmly welcome each of you to this important webinar. It is our pleasure to meet with each one of you today and appreciate your taking the time. Good morning to all of you. என்னோட வரவேற்புரையை ஆரம்பிக்கிறதுக்கு முன்னாடி திரு அன்பரசனுக்கு 2 பாயிண்ட்ஸ் ஷேர் பண்ண விரும்புகிறேன் சிக்கி சார்பாக. முதலாவது, சென்ற மாதம் எலெக்ஷன்ல ஜெயிச்சு இந்த கவர்மெண்ட்டை ஃபார்ம் பண்ணி ஒரு நல்லபடியாக இந்த கவர்மெண்ட் நடந்துட்டு இருக்கு. ஸோ அதுக்கு சிக்கி சார்பாக எங்களோட வாழ்த்துக்களை தெரிவிச்சுக்க விரும்புகிறோம். ரெண்டாவது, இந்த கோவிட் பேண்டமிக்னால எக்கச்சக்கமா துன்பம் உண்டாயிருக்கு எல்லா மக்களுக்கும், எல்லா செக்ஷன்ல இருக்கிற மக்களுக்கும். ஆனால் இந்த ஆட்சி ஏற்றதுக்கு அப்புறம் சில வாரங்கள்லயே மாண்புமிகு முதலமைச்சர் தலைமையில நல்ல முடிவுகளை எடுத்துட்டு வந்திருக்கு இந்த ஆட்சி, இந்த அரசாங்கம். இதனால நம்பர்ஸும் கொஞ்சம் குறைஞ்சிருக்கு. சிக்கி சார்பாக இந்த நல்ல முயற்சி கண்டிப்பா தொடரும்னு நம்புறோம். We certainly look forward to it. SICCI looks forward to Thiru M.K. Stalin's leadership and this government taking firm measures to grow our state and our industry into becoming global leaders. SICCI will continue to work closely with the government to further industry, policy making, and inclusive growth. This is especially towards revitalizing economic growth during this post-COVID recovery period. I'd like to share a few words about SICCI with you. SICCI has completed 110 years of service to industry, government, and society. Founded in 1909 under the inspiration of Mahatma Gandhi, SICCI has inherited a rich tradition while at the same time remaining youthful, dynamic, and embracing change. SICCI has been conceptualizing and conducting several events and in the process working extremely closely with the government of Tamil Nadu. COVID-19 has certainly changed each of our lives, and it is increasingly clear that life will never be the same again. We should look upon these changes brought upon by the pandemic as opportunities rather than threats, converting them into game-changing new pathways of progress. We understand that businesses will not be able to weather the economic downturn on their own. Because of this, policy actions and timely assistance are crucial in mitigating the impacts of the crisis. I would like to share with you today 2 points of recommendations. The first is the immediate term recommendations, and secondly, the longer term recommendations, which is post-COVID. I'd like to start off with the immediate term recommendations. SICCI would like to suggest a 9-point agenda to the government to ensure that industry in the region stays competitive while not compromising on safety at the same time. First, providing adequate working capital support to companies, especially MSMEs. This will prevent them from collapsing due to their reducing incomes. While banks have been saying that this is happening, we, however, don't find it so on the ground. Secondly, we should be able to allow companies to reduce their workforce so that they can reduce expenses and survive during this critical juncture. This will enable our companies in turn to expand their workforce once they stabilize and start growing. Third, we have to be able to look at relaxing several Factories Act rules that would allow companies to reduce costs and continue to sustain. Fourth, it's important to be able to coordinate with the central government agencies for faster clearances of exports and import shipments so that companies do not face any delay whatsoever. There are a tremendous number of delays because of a lot of staff not coming to the office, which we can try to see how it can be ironed out for the benefit of companies' better exports. The fifth immediate recommendation that we would like to talk about is that of requesting the Income Tax Department to release all refunds and dues immediately, while also resolving pending cases faster without further delay. This will enable our companies to strengthen their working capital and hence their survival. The department can also certainly consider deferring show cause notices that are currently being issued. Sixth, requesting the Ministry of Commerce for the quick disbursement of the MEIS RODTEP benefits, which are certainly hindering exports, slowing it down to a good extent. Seventh, we should look at an absolute relaxation of all loan repayments, as otherwise no one gains in the process. We have to be able to look at how we can enable our companies to first survive the downturn and then give them time to be able to make their repayments. So whether it is our banking system or the RBI for that matter, we have to look at how we can enable these companies to survive. The eighth immediate measure that we would like to suggest is that SICCI would like to recommend the government for a substantial stimulus package to support the economy, trade, and industry during this time, especially the MSME sector, which critically needs this kind of financing. It needs to be in the form of extending the moratorium period as well and offering concessional borrowing rates. And finally, we would like to look at the government considering a proposal to not levy electricity fixed charges for all factories and industries. These are the 9 immediate term measures that we would like to suggest. When we look at the longer term recommendations, which also have to be looked into rather than only concentrating on the short term, we would like to suggest 12 points for the benefit of the government. We feel that each one of these 12 points will be good points of focus for the government to be able to move forth and develop the economy, sustain the economy, and continue growing. First, we have to increase our focus on infrastructure. We have to use available funds and move forth on our smart cities plans to quickly develop the needed infrastructure. This will have the twin effect of promoting investments and also creating jobs. Number two, we have to be able to look at accelerating mega projects, whether it is the Bangalore-Chennai Industrial Corridor, the Vizag-Chennai Industrial Corridor, as well as the Chennai-Kanyakumari Industrial Corridor. These have to be speeded up. This would raise the level of infrastructure available for industry. And in this regard, we can also look at cottage industries around each one of these corridors being encouraged, thereby increasing the livelihood of people in the respective regions. Three, we have to also fast forward the Defense Corridor project. All of you will be aware that Tamil Nadu has gained the second Defense Corridor status after Uttar Pradesh, and the government of India certainly wanting to develop this further. We have to be able to renew the thrust in indigenization of the defense sector. This especially has to be acted on fastly, building the defense corridor projects and reviving interest in this high priority sector. SICCI has been a pioneer in Tamil Nadu in moving within this sector. We've already conducted 2 events along with our armed forces and 1 event with the Czech Republic that I also represent within Tamil Nadu. In this process, we've also come up with 3 excellent knowledge reports that will be of use to government and industry. The 4th long-term measure that we would like to suggest is that of operationalize major policies, whether it's the textile policy, the electronics hardware policy, or the startup policy for that matter. We have to be able to update it and operationalize it at the earliest. 5th, we have to nurture our MSMEs. These industrial units need to be provided with a 2-year moratorium to help them focus on reviving their SICC units. They also need to be provided mentoring services to help manage and market their products and services within our country as well as globally. 6th, we have to look at holistic industrial growth. Every district in the state needs to be studied and understood as far as its inherent strengths and weaknesses. A district-wise plan needs to be formulated to revive and nurture local industry and exports from there as well. Seventh, we need to redefine skill development. With significant advances in technology, skill development initiatives, especially the Apex Skill Development Center, ASDC, needs to be revisited to make it more attractive and meaningful towards an employable and dynamic workforce. Eighth, a new post-COVID growth policy should be developed. As the pandemic and its consequences are expected to last for a longer period, the government needs to have a dedicated post-COVID growth policy outlining the role and responsibility of every stakeholder. This is in order to counter the damage that has been caused by the pandemic. Ninth, we have to also look into augmenting our healthcare infrastructure. Healthcare needs have to be accessible, available, affordable, and of high quality. Importantly, we have to be able to be ready to handle peak demand rather than just talking about handling the average demand. 10th, we also have to look into redefining Ti Ic. The government has spoken about it. Ti Ic is the Tamil Nadu Industrial Investment Corporation. It is important to increase the fund base of Ti Ic, ensuring its development focus to make industry self-sufficient and creating more jobs. There has to be a concerted effort to move away from making it a bank and ensuring its focus of being pure development-oriented financing. 11th, the development of Fintech cities, which has been one of the pet projects of our Honorable Chief Minister. While TITCO has been tasked with setting up of a Fintech city in Chennai, it would be hugely financially beneficial to explore the possibility of instituting Fintech cities across the state. A hub and spokes model will ensure a holistic development of the state while also ensuring the high technology penetration even in the rural hinterlands. The final area of longer term recommendations that we would like to give the government is that of sustainable development. All in all, the entire development needs to be made sustainable with a minimum carbon footprint. Key parameters such as decreasing pollution levels, effective traffic management, increased public transport systems, and other smart infrastructure needs to be integrated into the overall strategy. In this context, renewable energy also plays a very important role here. Solar in particular, especially with costs coming down significantly. So these are the 9 immediate term and 12 long-term recommendations that we would like to make to the government. With regards to what's next, SICCIs 24 expert committees have already submitted their recommendations for the policy expectations from the new government. We will be including these deliberations of this morning's event as well and submitting the final report to the government of Tamil Nadu. We would like to request members to share their comments and recommendations for us to include in this report. Once the report is published, we will be submitting the report to the Honorable Chief Minister as well as to all ministers and bureaucrats for their necessary action. Our work would continue as we would be following up on the report to ensure the implementation of such much needed recommendations. When we look at SICCI and our working during the pandemic, SICCI has led the way in converting challenges presented by the pandemic, turning them into opportunities. We have dared to go beyond seminars and have been working on multiple projects, knowledge reports, as well as furthering our flagships. Let me share with you 5 new projects that we've been working on. The first is that we've partnered with the government of Tamil Nadu in engaging with the global Tamil diaspora. One of our flagship programs, the Yadu Mure Conclave, was attended by over 4,000 participants globally from over 38 countries and spanning over 300 associations. We look forward to our efforts with the government this year as well and going forward, as we will be keeping up this outreach effort to get our Tamil diaspora globally more engaged with our state. Secondly, SICCI has been working closely with the Chennai Corporation in creating a sister cities desk, again to be able to increase Chennai's connect with the world. Third, we've also been working with the Department of Culture to build an industry museum that will be able to capture industrial growth within our state over the last 7 to 8 decades, as well as a futuristic presentation of how things can develop. Fourth, we have been working with the Chennai Metro Rail in setting up readers' lounges for the benefit of riders, which again is a good initiative that is bound to add value across society. Lastly, we have been working on another new initiative this year, which has been the monthly SICCI 360 series that I've been hosting. We have had globally renowned guests sharing with us their all-round path to success. Towards the end of my address, there has been much negativity reported in the public domain in the recent past, especially concerning COVID and its related impacts. SICCI is certainly encouraged by the several positive signs that our new government in Tamil Nadu, under the leadership of Honorable Chief Minister through M.K. Stalin, has since been taking. These include resilience of the state healthcare sector, as well as its professionals, whom we certainly appreciate during these trying times. There has been a lot of attention as well that the government has been taking to increase its vaccine availability by reaching out to various countries. SICCI believes that the new government under the able leadership of Thiru M.K. Stalin is adequately qualified to swiftly bring back normalcy and lead the state into new avenues of growth and development. என்னோட வரவேற்புரையை முடிக்கிறதுக்கு முன்னாடி திரு அன்பரசனுக்கு இன்னொரு வாட்டி எங்களோட நன்றியை தெரிவிச்சுக்க விரும்புகிறேன். இன்னைக்கு வந்து எங்களோட பார்ட்டிசிபேட் பண்ணி இந்த event அட்ரஸ் பண்றதுக்கு. We would also like to appreciate working with our good friend, Mr. Mayappan. I would also like to take this opportunity to appreciate the efforts of our secretary, Mr. Vinod Solomon and his team. Within SICCI, we have been extremely busy since August, September of 2020, ensuring that we contribute to as much value addition as possibly can. And we are very glad that our secretariat has been keeping up. With these few words, I wish you all a fruitful session today. Also wishing each one of you safe times ahead. Thank you. Nandri, vanakkam.
Thank you, Mr. Arun, for your insightful and detailed address. We would now like to release the knowledge report that we have put together with the comments from our expert committees. I would like to request Mr. A.R. Arun, President SICCI, to release this report. தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபையின் பல நிபுணர் குழுக்கள் செயல்பட்டு வருகின்றன. அரசாங்கத்தில் இருக்கிற பல துறைகள் போல பல நிபுணர் குழுக்கள், 24 நிபுணர் குழுக்கள் இங்க இருக்கிறாங்க. இந்த நிபுணர் குழுக்கள் ஒருவரோடு ஒருவர் இணைந்து பல பரிந்துரைகளை செய்திருக்கிறார்கள். தமிழ்நாட்டிற்கு என்ன தேவை, அவசியமாக என்னென்ன முயற்சிகளில் ஈடுபட வேண்டும் என்று பல பரிந்துரைகளை அவர்கள் செய்திருக்கிறார்கள். இந்த பரிந்துரைகளை JLL நிறுவனமானது ஒன்றாக இணைத்து ஒரு ரிப்போர்ட் இப்ப ரிலீஸ் பண்றதுக்கு ஆயத்தமாக இருக்கிறது. சோ இந்த ரிப்போர்ட் மிஸ்டர் அருண் சொன்னது போல தமிழகத்துல நம்ம CM முதற்கொண்டு ஒவ்வொரு தொழில் துறைகளிலும் ஒவ்வொரு அமைச்சர்களையும் நாங்கள் சந்தித்து இந்த அறிக்கையை சமர்ப்பிக்க போகிறோம். So now I request Mr. Arun to release the report, please.
Friends, as I had mentioned, we have 24 expert committees within SICCI, and the recommendations of each one of these committees have been gathered together. Our knowledge partner of today, JLL, has assisted in preparing this report. I'm glad to be releasing this report on behalf of SICCI. As also shared by Mr. Vinod Solomon, we will be including the recommendations of today's event along with this report and submitting it to the government as well as to each one of you. We will also be posting this on our website. The final edition of this report is due for release on the 10th of June. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arun. I would now like to request Dr. Vinod Surana, partner and CEO of Surana and Surana International Attorneys, to deliver the inaugural address. இப்பொழுது திரு டாக்டர் வினோத் சுரானா அண்ட் சுரானா இன்டர்நேஷனல் அட்டார்னிஸ் நிறுவனத்திலிருந்து அவர்கள் இந்த நிகழ்ச்சிக்கு துவக்க உரையை ஆற்றுவார்கள். டாக்டர் வினோத் சுரானா, ப்ளீஸ்.
தேங்க்யூ வினோத். இங்கு வருகை தந்திருக்கும் அனைவருக்கும் என்னுடைய இனிய காலை வணக்கங்கள். Honorable Minister for Rural Industries, Government of Tamil Nadu, Thiru Anbarasan, Dynamic President of the Southern India Chamber, Thiru ARRM Arun, fellow members of the chamber, dear panelists, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure and a matter of pride for me to give the opening remarks for this very important session on the agenda which the industry suggests for the government of Tamil Nadu in the next 5 years. Our president has made very significant recommendations. He has covered a lot of recommendations for the short term, and possibly the panelists will also do so. So I will concentrate on some of the points which I would like to place before the government for its consideration in the next 5 years. Let us understand a few basic concepts when we say that we would like to give an agenda for the government. Today, quality and visionary leadership is the main competitive edge that a state can have in its fight for talent and capital. All states are competing very fiercely for talent and capital. Decision making has to be quick and precise, and therefore a fundamental change in mindset and approach is required. The government has to be on mission mode from day one. We are living in an age of technology. The government will benefit a lot by unleashing the power of technology, transparency, and accountability by introducing e-governance at every level and in every approval or decision-making process. It is common knowledge that capital and talent go towards the place where it is most welcome. And our government must win this competition by creating and providing for the citizens of Tamil Nadu a better life, an ecosystem of security, ease of doing business, an attractive lifestyle, and a conducive socio-economic and professional environment. My years of research has shown that industrial hubs cannot be created. Industrial hubs emerge in the presence of favorable circumstances, in the presence of conducive socio-economic and environmental factors. My research over the past few years has also shown that mega investments can no longer be attracted by specialized policies. Mega investments require a robust MSME system to be attracted towards a particular state. Therefore, fiscal support, policy support is vital to promote and strengthen the MSMEs. For the success of any project or any state, timely and flawless execution is key. And therefore, the bureaucracy and the police are very important stakeholders in our state's progress. They must be adequately empowered for their role. A few words I would like to place before you and the government, and that on the role of justice, security, and quick decision making in attracting talent, capital, and better quality of life. It is very important to modernize the subordinate judiciary and the police. It is important to fill up all vacancies. I am given to understand that the subordinate judiciary in Tamil Nadu alone has more than 25% vacancies. The subordinate judiciary and the police need to be trained in the use of modern technology and modern management techniques. I am saying this in the beginning of my talk because I believe that Effective, accountable, and transparent law and security apparatus is vital to attract capital and attract talent. Another very important point which I place before the government for its consideration is, as a policy, all disputes, especially all civil disputes which involve the government, must be resolved by fast-track online arbitrations. Why do I say this? Quick dispute resolution increases investor confidence and public trust. The next point I would like to place is, the government must quickly review and revise the master development plan to incorporate contemporary town and country layouts for appropriate infrastructure to attract high quality talent and capital from across the world. For example, small city states like Singapore and Dubai have released their master plans, and these master plans emphasize for the next 20 years on quality of livability, ecological conservation, health and lifestyle. In our context, when we are speaking of not a city but a state, we should liberalize development norms for tier 2 and tier 3 cities to de-urbanize and distribute development. Global warming and pollution is a very significant impact causing phenomenon today. The state government would do well to move agriculture up the value chain by promoting organic farming and rooftop farming. This will increase income for the state's agriculturalists and reduce pollution. Our Honorable President spoke about the defense corridor. I had worked very hard 3 years ago to conceptualize, advocate, and get this corridor to Tamil Nadu. The state government must work with the central government to bring to the state on this defense corridor facilities and labs of the DRDO, ISRO, and HAL. These will kickstart the defense manufacturing corridor in a big manner. The state already has the skills and the talent required for the defense manufacturing corridor in its existing auto, IT, and engineering industries. So this could be a force multiplier. The state could also consider declaring as strategic initiatives, strategic industries, the startup ecosystem, the electric and autonomous vehicle ecosystem, the electronic hub ecosystem, the data center hub ecosystem, and the furniture manufacturing ecosystem, by providing clear policy and fiscal support to these sectors for the next 10 years. One important suggestion I would like to place for the government: it should consider purchasing at least 50% of its transportation needs, be it commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, or light vehicles, from the electric vehicle segment, and provide for tax and other incentives for vehicles, for procuring vehicles made in the state. This will transform the state's image, the state's industry and ecosystem, and have a very long-term impact on industry. Our president had spoken about reducing pollution. I believe the state would do well to commit to reduce 25% of its carbon footprint in the next 5 years. Why do I say this? I say this because to attract talent and capital, the state has to improve its livability rankings. Another consideration which the state can take is to continuously upgrade the skill of the government employees. This will have a force multiplier effect. The government can consider using technologies in its e-government initiatives like data analytics to track the allocations, usage, and expenses of all departments. The Public Works Department should be encouraged to use new technologies such as 3D printings when it is putting up public buildings and infrastructure. Our president has spoken about the Sister Cities program, so I will not speak much, except that I will emphasize once again that this will give a multiplier effect by being able to attract technology, talent to our state. 4 years ago, the state government had reduced the guideline value of all the real estate in the state by 30%. This was 4 years ago when there was already a downturn. With the economic impact of the corona pandemic, the state government could do better to encourage investments and employment in the real estate sector by reducing further guideline value of all properties by at least 25%, and of course, not further increasing stamp duties and other government levies. The state government must consider giving special incentives to already established industries in Tamil Nadu to not go to other states. It is good to attract investors, new investments, but it's also equally important to keep our existing stakeholders and industries happy by giving them incentives to increase their capacity within the state. I place another point for the consideration of the government, and which is to set up a separate ministry for e-waste recycling, promotion of green technology, and prevention of climate change impact. Promoting Tamil Nadu as a green technology and a green hub, whether it is renewable energy or electronic waste ecosystem, will play a very important role in attracting new high-tech industries to the state, apart from attracting top talent and capital. The chamber has highlighted, Vinod Solomon highlighted, our president highlighted, we are trying to engage with the Tamil diaspora. I remember about 10 years, 15 years ago, I had worked with the government of Gujarat on the engagement of the Gujarati diaspora. It was a grand success. I believe the Tamil Nadu government and the Tamil state will do very well to engage with the diverse, talented, resourceful, and influential diaspora to attract talent, technology, and capital. One force multiplier idea which I would like to place before the government is we must work very hard to attract at least 2 globally recognized institutions to set up their India campus in Tamil Nadu. This will have a very significant impact on the already strong existing education sector in Tamil Nadu. The last point I would like to place for the government's consideration is we have a couple of loss-making government enterprises. The government will do well to consider bringing in strategic investors to revive these loss-making stagnant industries back to profitability. There are at least about 43 other suggestions which I have. There is paucity of time, so I will not make those. I will send it to the chamber for inclusion in the report. I thank the chamber for this opportunity, and I thank our Honorable Minister and the senior officers who are attending this program for this patient hearing. I will be glad to answer any number of questions on how practically these suggestions can be implemented and who can be a part of this whole process. Thank you very much. Over to you, Vinod.
Thank you so much, Dr. Surana, for your valuable points. I would now like to request our Honorable Minister to address us. இந்த வேளையில எவ்வளவோ பல அலுவல்கள் இருந்தாலும் நம்முடைய மாண்புமிகு அமைச்சர் அவர்கள் நாம் ஒரு விண்ணப்பத்தை வைத்தவுடன் உடனடியாக இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியில நான் பங்கேற்கிறேன்னு சொல்லி அதை உடனடியாக சரி என்று சொன்னார்கள். மாண்புமிகு அமைச்சர் அவர்களுக்கு எங்களுடைய உளமார்ந்த நன்றிகளை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். இப்பொழுது அமைச்சர் அவர்களை இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியில சிறப்புரை ஆற்றுவதற்கு அழைக்கிறோம். Honorable Minister, please.
தமிழ்நாட்டின் தொழில்துறையின் தேவைகளுக்கான தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபையின் கொள்கை பரிந்துரைகள் பற்றிய காணொலி காட்சி மூலம் நடைபெறும் கலந்தாய்வு கூட்டத்தில் கலந்து கொண்டு நம் அனைவரையும் அன்போடு வரவேற்று மகிழ்ந்திருக்கிற தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபை தலைவர் மரியாதைக்குரிய அருண் அவர்களே, தொடக்க உரை ஆற்றியிருக்கிற சுரோனா நிறுவனத்தின் CEO டாக்டர் வினோத் சுரோனா அவர்களே, இந்த காணொலி காட்சி கூட்டத்திலே கலந்து கொண்டு சிறப்பித்துள்ள பாஸ்கான் தொழிற்சாலையினுடைய நிர்வாக இயக்குனர் திரு ஜோஷ் கோல்கர் அவர்களே, கல்பாத்தி நிதி நிறுவனங்களினுடைய தலைவர் திரு சுரேஷ் கல்பாத்தி அவர்களே, ஸ்ட்ராட்டஜி கன்சல்டிங் தலைவர் திரு சங்கர் அவர்களே, மகேந்திரா தொழில் நிறுவனத்தினுடைய வணிக தலைவர் திரு வைபவ் மிட்டல் அவர்களே, மேத்தா மருத்துவமனை துணைத் தலைவர் திரு சமீர் மேத்தா அவர்களே, மற்றும் காணொலி காட்சியிலே கலந்து கொண்டிருக்கிற தொழில் முனைவோர்களே, இறுதியாக நன்றியுரை ஆற்றுள்ள தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபையினுடைய துணைத் தலைவர் திரு சிவசங்கர் அவர்களே, அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். தமிழகத்துடைய தொழில்துறையின் தேவைகளுக்கான தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபையின் கொள்கை பரிந்துரைகள் பற்றிய காணொலி கலந்தாய்வு கூட்டத்தில் உரையாற்றும் நல்ல வாய்ப்பை அளித்த தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபைக்கு என் நன்றியை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். தமிழ்நாட்டில் விவசாயத்திற்கு அடுத்தபடியாக குறு சிறு மற்றும் நடுத்தர தொழில்துறை பொருளாதார வளர்ச்சிக்கு பெரும் பங்களித்து வருகிறது என்பது அனைவரும் அறிந்தது. தமிழகத்தில் அதிகபட்ச வேலைவாய்ப்பை உருவாக்கக்கூடிய முக்கிய துறையாகும். இந்தியாவில் உத்தரப்பிரதேசம் மற்றும் மேற்கு வங்காளத்திற்கு அடுத்தபடியாக தமிழகத்தில் மொத்தம் 23,60,60,000 தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் ரூபாய் 2,73,000 கோடி முதலீட்டில் தொடங்கப்பட்டு 1,52,00,000 பேருக்கு வேலை வாய்ப்புகள் வழங்கப்பட்டு வருகிறது. இன்றைக்கு தமிழகம் 3வது மாநிலமாக திகழ்ந்து வருகிறது. தமிழகத்தை முதல் மாநிலம் ஆக்குவதே திராவிட முன்னேற்ற கழக அரசின் கொள்கையாக இருக்கிறது என்பதை நான் இந்த நேரத்தில் மகிழ்ச்சியோடு தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். மேலும் தமிழகம் ஜவுளி ஆயுத ஆடைகள், பொறியியல் பொருட்கள், தானியங்கி வாகன உதிரி பாகங்கள், தோல் மற்றும் தோல் பொருட்கள் உற்பத்தியில் முக்கிய இடம் வகிக்கிறது. பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டிற்கு குறு சிறு நடுத்தர தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் குறிப்பிடத்தக்க பங்களிப்பை வழங்கிய போதிலும் தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபை இத்துறையில் உள்ள சிக்கல்கள் மற்றும் பிரச்சனைகளை, அதாவது உட்கட்டமைப்பு குறைபாடுகள், நிதி ஆதார குறைவு, கடன் பெறுவதில் ஏற்படும் பிரச்சனைகள், பெரிய நிறுவனத்திலிருந்து வர வேண்டிய தொகை வருவதில் ஏற்படும் காலதாமதம், தொழில்நுட்ப மேம்பாட்டில் சுணக்கம், திறன் மேம்பாட்டில் உள்ள சிக்கல்கள் உள்ளிட்ட 9 பிரச்சனைகளை அரசின் கவனத்திற்கு கொண்டு வந்துள்ளது. புதிய அரசு இப்பிரச்சனைகளை உரிய முறையில் கையாண்டு விரைவில் தீர்த்து வைக்கும் என்ற உத்தரவாதத்தை இந்த நேரத்தில் நான் அளிக்கிறேன். தற்போது கொரோனா பெரும் தொற்று பரவலாக உலகம் பேரழிவு சூழலில் சிக்கி தவிக்கிறது. தமிழ்நாட்டில் கொரோனா பரவலை கட்டுப்படுத்தி தமிழக மக்களின் உயிர் காத்திடும் பணியில் நம்முடைய தமிழக முதல்வர் தளபதி அவர்கள் இரவு பகல் பாராமல் கடுமையாக உழைத்து வருகிறார். தற்போது தமிழகத்தில் கொரோனா தொற்று காரணமாக நீடிக்கப்பட்ட ஊரடங்கினால் சிறு குறு மற்றும் நடுத்தர தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் நிதி நெருக்கடி, வெளி மாநில தொழிலாளர்கள் வெளியேற்றப்பட்டதால் தொழிலாளர்கள் பற்றாக்குறை, குறைந்த கொள்முதல், உயர்ந்த உற்பத்தி செலவுகள் ஆகியவற்றால் பெரிதும் பாதிக்கப்பட்டுள்ளன. இப்பாதிப்பிலிருந்து தமிழகத்தில் குறு சிறு நடுத்தர தொழில்களை மீட்டெடுக்க நம்முடைய தமிழக முதல்வர் தளபதி அவர்கள் தலைமையிலான புதிய அரசு ஒரு ஒரு செயல் திட்டத்தை வகுக்க உள்ளது. இத்திட்டப்படி தொழில் நிறுவனங்களை புனரமைத்தல், இழக்கப்பட்டுள்ள வேலைவாய்ப்பை மீட்டு புதிய வேலைவாய்ப்புகளை உருவாக்குதல், தொழில்நுட்பத்தை மேம்படுத்துதல், மின்னணு முறையை கடைபிடித்தல் ஆகியவற்றில் தீவிர கவனம் செலுத்தி இத்துறையை முதன்மை துறையாக மாற்றி அமைப்போம் என்ற உத்தரவாதத்தை இந்த நேரத்தில் நான் தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். தமிழக முதல்வர் கொரோனாவால் பாதிக்கப்பட்டுள்ள சிறு குறு நடுத்தர தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் உடனடியாக பயன்பெறும் வகையில் பல்வேறு சலுகைகளை அறிவித்துள்ளார் என்பது உங்களுக்கெல்லாம் நன்கு தெரியும். குறிப்பாக குறு சிறு நடுத்தர தொழில் நிறுவனங்களுக்கு முதலீட்டு மானியம் வழங்க இந்த அரசு இந்த நிதியாண்டில் ரூபாய் 250 கோடி ஒதுக்கப்பட்டு அதில் 60% தொகையான ரூபாய் 168 கோடி விடுவிக்க அரசாணை வெளியிட்டுள்ளது என்பதை நான் மகிழ்ச்சியோடு தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். இத்தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் வங்கிகளிடம் இருந்து கடன் உதவி பெறும் போது செலுத்த வேண்டிய முத்திரைத்தாள் பதிவு கட்டணம் செலுத்துவதிலிருந்து டிசம்பர் மாதம் வரை விலக்கு அளிக்கப்பட்டுள்ளது. சிட்கோ நிறுவனத்திற்கு செலுத்த வேண்டிய மனை விலை தவணை தொகை வாடகை செலுத்துவதற்கு மேலும் 6 மாத காலம் அவகாசம் நீடிக்கப்பட்டுள்ளது. இத்தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் மாசு கட்டுப்பாடு வாரியம், தீயணைப்புத்துறை, தொழிலாளர் துறை, வணிக உரிமம் உள்ளிட்ட அனைத்து உரிமங்களை புதுப்பிக்க டிசம்பர் மாதம் வரை நீடிக்கப்பட்டுள்ளது. இந்நிறுவனங்களில் பணிபுரியும் பணியாளர்கள் செலுத்த வேண்டிய தொழில் வரியை செலுத்த 3 மாத கால அவகாசமும் வழங்கியுள்ளது. தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபை போன்ற தொழில் அமைப்புகள் தொடர்ச்சியாக குறு சிறு நடுத்தர தொழில் நிறுவனங்களுக்கு தேவையான உதவிகளையும் ஊக்கத்தையும் வழங்க வேண்டும். இன்றைய காணொலி காட்சி கலந்தாய்வு கூட்டம் மூலம் இந்த வர்த்தக சபை உறுப்பினர்களுக்கு கூறிய கொள்கை பரிந்துரைகளை உள்ளடக்கி தமிழகத்தின் தொழில் வளர்ச்சிக்கான அறிக்கையாக தயார் செய்து அரசுக்கு விரைவில் அனுப்பி வைத்திட கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறேன். அரசு இக்கொள்கை பரிந்துரைகளை ஆய்வு செய்து நிச்சயமாக உரிய நடவடிக்கை எடுக்கும். நம்முடைய தமிழகத்தில் 3வது இடத்தில் இருக்கிற நம்முடைய தமிழகம் முதல் இடத்திலே வருவதற்கு உங்களுடைய ஒத்துழைப்போடு நம்முடைய தமிழகத்திலே தொழில் மேலும் பல வளர்ச்சிகளை பெற நாங்கள் முழு ஒத்துழைப்பு தருவோம், அந்த வளர்ச்சியை ஏற்படுத்துவோம் என்ற செய்தியை சொல்லி இந்த காணொலி காட்சி கூட்டத்திலே கலந்து கொண்டு எனக்கும் ஒரு வாய்ப்பளித்த உங்களுக்கு நன்றி சொல்லி விடைபெறுகிறேன். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
தேங்க்யூ சார். மாண்புமிகு அமைச்சர்களுக்கு தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபையின் சார்பாக எங்களது நன்றிகளை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். ஐயா, நீங்கள் கூறியது போல 3வது இடத்திலிருந்து முதல் இடத்தில் நாம் விரைவில் வருவோம். தென்னிந்திய தொழில் வர்த்தக சபை போன்ற எல்லா தொழில் நிறுவனங்கள் மற்றும் எல்லா சங்கங்கள் இணைந்து உங்களோடு செயல்படுவோம் என்று நாங்கள் இந்த நிலையில் வாக்குறுதி அளிக்கிறோம். We will move forward to the panel discussion. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Samir Mehta, the Vice Chairman for Dr. Mehta's Hospitals, to lead the panel. So we have put together an eminent panel. So we have senior members of the industry from across different sectors being a part of this panel. We have Mr. Josh Fowler, Country Head and Managing Director, FIH India, a Foxconn Technology Group company. Mr. Suresh Kalpati, Chairman, Kalpati AGS. Mr. Shankar, Head Strategic Consulting and Advisory, JLL India, Sri Lanka. Mr. Vaibhav Vittal, Business Head, Mahindra World City and Origins. All these leaders will be a part of our panel today. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the platform to Mr. Samir Mehta. Over to you, Samir.
Thank you, Vinod. First, Manbumigu Amaichar Thiru Ambarsan Avargalai Mika Nandri. Thank you. I think it's remarkable that we should, at a time of a crisis, first look at the pluses. Tamil Nadu has a rich history, it has an outstanding culture, and we are much better than we have ever been before. For all the negativity that sometimes is popular in the press and media, and sometimes that drives us during times of crisis, we should look at the positives. Of course, we're in the middle of a crisis. I think nearly everybody understands, everybody has been touched, whether you're in urban cities, whether you're in towns, whether you're in the tier 2 cities, whether you're in the villages, whether you're traveling between these, you're seeing the reality of devastation caused by something that a year and a half ago none of us had seen. If you rewind the clock back to the times of a great pandemic in the 1930s, you will understand that the fabric of society that was there before and the fabric that was there after were fundamentally different. They weren't just because of wars, they were also because of how humans reacted to some of the largest sea changes in the world. And I think it will be the same during this period. We will see the rise of new powers around the world. We will see the rise of new industries, leaders, and technologies that perhaps we had never seen or foreseen before. But we will also see resilience of the human spirit, and that is our hope. And I think there is nothing better than what we have seen today. First of all, thanks. I think some of the remarks by Thiru Arun and my dear friend Vinod ji were on the dot. I think those recommendations, along with some of the early steps our Honorable Minister have actually already initiated, I would definitely say that the early days of our government have actually been strong in helping us strengthen the resilience. And we saw that from a peak during COVID, where we are today, is a long way. But that being said, I think an early good start leads to strong expectations. And I think, and I hope that this panel of ours that we're about to discuss with some of the stalwarts of industry, two fellow angels of mine, Josh and Suresh, will bring us different perspectives from Shri Arunji, as well as from the perspectives of real estate enterprise, Mr. Shankar, and also Mr. Vaibhav, where we will see a different perspective on some of these long bets that we need to take in Tamil Nadu, so that what we mentioned before, that as we saw in the 30s and 40s of the previous century, we will see in the 30s and 40s of this century for Tamil Nadu. And I think that is the opportunity on which we stand. It is an opportunity like no other. The other piece I'm going to state is that as we walk through the panel, please post your questions. We will try and answer many of them in real time by asking some of our panelists that have good experience and expertise around this. But more importantly, the hope and the perspective would be that there are some things that you have to do to keep the ship stable and our society stable during this crisis. There are some things we will have to do that are mid to long-term bets for those existing incumbents, like our honorable friend Vinod ji stated earlier, that if you keep the existing people happy, help them increase their production, keep Tamil Nadu continuously on the map of positive production and positive progress, people will see that. Couple that with some of these long-term bets, whether it is inviting new industries like electric vehicles, whether it's strengthening components like perhaps there is an opportunity around medical devices and pharmaceutical molecules, or even perhaps supporting the vaccine development, of which we do have some expertise, whether it's developing the electronics corridors, the defense corridors, of which I think one of the key ingredients would be to strengthen the ecosystem of component manufacturing. And I hope our friend Josh talks about that. Whether it's continuing to make sure that Tamil Nadu is consistently on the map for education, which it has been, for health, which it has been, but has been severely tested, and for the service sector that I think some of you will hopefully bring into play. How do we make and support a government and support the rest of our industry in making our place better? So that is the context around which the next 45 to 50 minutes will be discussed around. I think let me start with a question to my dear friend Josh. Yours is one of the few industries, Josh, when everyone talks about the fantastic Foxconn unit. Some of us have been fortunate to visit and see it. But I think what you have really done for the state previously and now currently is something that is a shining light. But clearly the pandemic has brought a lot of challenges. Managing such a large distributed workforce, managing across districts has not been easy, and in some cases across the state borders. We are hearing that the growth and the industry is a little bit flat and low on confidence. We'd love to understand what current policies are helping you address the industry challenges, and are there current or new policies that you think will help you through your new growth? Josh.
Thanks, Sam, and good morning, Honorable Minister, Mr. Arun, the SICCI Secretary. It's a pleasure to be here. I think this is COVID too, Sam, right? So we have implemented safety precautions as an industry already during COVID-1. A lot of the things we did last year have helped us, but safety remains #1 priority. So every decision we as an industry make has been around that. And I have to tell you, the support from the government of Tamil Nadu has been outstanding. At this time, be it support of vaccination of employees, approvals for various reasons has been just outstanding. So I think the safety mindset which we have as an industry is supported extremely well by Tamil Nadu and very well supported in the center. Now, one of the things, and we'll talk more during the course of this conversation today, Sam, but one of the things which we have been tested is supply chain resiliency. When you look at the Gartner's, supply chain ranking, one of the things they look for is supply chain resiliency. And this is a benchmark where the supply chains, global value chains are really tested. And we have been tested. The recovery after COVID-1 was I think quite spectacular, with people returning, the safety precautions being followed, from where we were, from the first wave, and down to the second wave. It was so it basically shows the world that India, Tamil Nadu is capable of sort of a V-shaped recovery, which in a way translates to the term supply chain resiliency. Is the demand there? Yes, there will be some short-term things, and yes, they will be moderated, but the demand is there. And I think we just need to be a little bit optimistic about the demand in India and outside returning, because as many speakers before me spoke, I think it's important that we have to balance it. I think like my friend Dr. Vinod Surana said, there are short-term things, there are mid-term things, and the long-term things. We have to manage all of these time horizons as leaders, well supported, by the new government. Now, in terms of policies, definitely the policy engine has not stopped. In fact, there's been a lot of creativity in supporting industries. The PLI scheme, which is founded for the electronics industry, has been fabulous, and I think that's really going to be a big engine from an export, standpoint. The Tamil Nadu electronics policy, which was done with such wide industry consultation here, is again going to be, one of those shining examples in India, but really in the world also. So I'll conclude my short speech, at least opening remarks, saying that yes, there is some challenges, short term, and we will overcome that, and we have to manage the time horizons. We have to manage short term, certain things, mid-term, certain things, and then long-term, certain things. I'm very, very confident and almost to a point bullish that we will overcome this. Back to you, Sam.
Thanks, Josh. I think it's great to hear such positive optimism. And I think we should also couple that with the fact that Tamil Nadu, I think, has worked extremely closely, public and private. So one of the things we have seen clearly is during this crisis, the healthcare sector has stood quite strongly alongside I think a very, very strong public sector. We obviously know many of the leaders in the private sector, whether it's in Dr. Arvind and Apollo hospitals, Sundaram Medical, Dr. Mehta's, VHS, Covey Medical. You can keep naming these stalwarts of healthcare that participate, but people forget that many of the oldest and the most prestigious healthcare institutions of the state are actually government. And I think they have done an exceptional piece of work. What I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in terms of data is some of the clinical outcomes that have come through Tamil Nadu during COVID, of not just COVID, but beyond, have been truly exceptional and world class. And I think that gives us room for optimism. And I think as I couple that with what I hear from Josh and what I think our friends in SICCI are trying to push forward, is there is a lot of case for optimism. Now I come to another friend, Suresh. You are obviously in the middle of combining service sector, education industries, as well as your investment arm, and you are therefore seeing a lot of different things. What has the pandemic and lockdown meant for your institutions and organization around you? What has fundamentally changed? And what do you think the government, as it comes on its feet, can do to help you this time going forward and help improve these industries? Suresh? I think he's having some technical problems. We can come back to Suresh. As he's
me?
Hey, Suresh.
You're able to hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, to the Honorable Minister, Arun, Vinod of SICCI, rest of the panelists and everybody participating, thank you for the opportunity. I'll really comment it from
I think we're struggling again. Let's come back to Suresh. Perhaps we'll jump to you, Vaibhav, while we'll get to it and look at it from a slightly different perspective, which is aligned to your strengths in building these industrial parks. I mean, Mahindra World City is a world-class city. What do you think we can do to build more of these? Are there any policy interventions that would benefit the industry? Vaibhavji?
Yeah. Good morning, Honorable Minister. Good morning, Amir, Josh, and other panelists. Thank you so much for having me here. Very interesting question, Samir, and I think what we do at World City has very strong resonance with the way industry actually works out in Tamil Nadu or in Chennai to a large extent, because we have a number of companies which are both falling within the essential services as well as within the realms of normal manufacturing. And what we have seen in during the COVID times, both during the first wave and now in the second wave, is three things. One is that the resilience of the industry is very, very strong. I think I resonate with what Josh actually earlier said, that the V-shaped curve which we saw and the way we bounced back was outstanding. We saw the same kind of a pattern here in World City as well. But apart from that, what we also saw was that people were more willing to, come out, adhere to some of the norms for the COVID, and come back to the work. That was something which was very heartening to see. And on top of that, what we saw was, the government giving full support in terms of starting the operations faster than normal times, and the way they supported the whole ecosystem getting back to its feet. So I think that was something which was very, very heartening to see during COVID times. And I think what we look forward is a similar kind of experience once we are out of the lockdown period. The discussions we are already having with the government at the district levels is something which is going to benefit the industries in faster starting of their operations as well as coming back on their feet faster.
Thanks. And I think if I extend this, clearly we're beginning to see the signs of obviously question mark progress in infrastructure. But infrastructure development is very critical for any state. And clearly that is something that most investors tend to piggyback around. What is your sense of the current infrastructure in the state, Shankar, and what do you think needs to be done?
Thanks. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, Honorable Minister, President SICCI, Secretary SICCI, and Samir for you. Also, I thank SICCI for giving Jalen an opportunity to be partner with this event as knowledge partners. So I think there's a valid question, Samir. I think infrastructure is most important factor for any investment to come into any part of the world, be it India, be it the state or a city. Today, every investor during their evaluation stage will look at a whole set of parameters, and infrastructure is one among them, both physical infrastructure and the social infrastructure in a particular micro market or the city or state. Physical infrastructure being the physical structures required for an economy. It could be like transport infrastructure, power, sewerage, water disposal, and all of that constitutes the physical infrastructure part. And the social infrastructure, which is very, very key for many of those companies who are looking at setting their operations in India, healthcare, education, and public facilities, entertainment, and all of that. If you ask me, Tamil Nadu is better among many states in India when it comes to infrastructure, because Tamil Nadu being the most urbanized state in India, it's been focusing on infrastructure for so many decades. And key focus of Tamil Nadu state for infrastructure being the urban infrastructure. I think it's done well when compared to other cities, but long way to go. As I said earlier, it's 50% is urban, close to 48% as per the census 2011. And the growth of urbanization is impacting the quality of life. In turn, it is also impacting the adequacy in terms of infrastructural services. Also, Tamil Nadu has been continuously focusing on the industrial developments or the industrial, be it the SICCIs, the corridor development being coming in a big way. IT's focus has been very good in the last 2 decades, coupled with the recent ones like data center. So Chennai is most preferred location for data centers across the globe. So that is coming up in a big way, and we need to encash on it. Apart from that, the other infrastructural aspects like renewables energy, Tamil Nadu is doing fantastically well in solar and wind. Transportation has been a focus area for Tamil Nadu, and tourism, of course, we have the iconic tourism sites, the heritage, the archaeological sites. So we have a varied mix when it comes to infrastructure. These are the aspects one would look at. But competing with each other, states are competing with each other, cities are competing with each other. So what we have delivered till date, is it enough? No, because the key differentiator for any state at this point in time is to deliver a robust infrastructure framework, which is also investor friendly. So Tamil Nadu could do far more better. I think this government will definitely deliver what has been left over, and I'm very positive Tamil Nadu is one of the most progressive states we all know. And to make, I think it's very important to set some goals for the new government. One, can Tamil Nadu be the India's top investment destination today by strengthening its state infrastructure and all of those other points the earlier speakers were talking about, and ultimately becoming the largest contributor to India's GDP. Today, I think Tamil Nadu contributes, Tamil Nadu is the second in the line, contributes to the India's GDP. I think can we contribute more, and it should come into the and also on the service sector, which contributes 90% of our state GDP. So there is a huge opportunity. I think the whole the objective for this particular segment whenever it comes to infrastructure is to Tamil Nadu's focus on economic and social development should be through the physical and social infrastructure, through various innovative initiatives. multiple sources of funding. I think focus should be on public-private partnerships. And somebody was talking about public-private partnerships earlier. I think it's very, very important. And also we need to increase the infrastructure spending by at least about 20% year-on-year growth on infrastructure spending, because in a way it is going to attract a lot of investments to that. As President was highlighting earlier, speeding up of corridor development and connectivity related projects. It will enhance the ease of movement between the cities. And at the end of the day, I think we need to come number one, as Honorable Minister was also saying that, okay, in industrial investment, we should reach the number one position. In GDP contribution, we should reach the number one position. And also the ease of doing business, important indicator for investors today. We are at 14. I think how to reach at the top so that we can attract most of these investors. I stop here. I will continue my thoughts later on towards the end of the session. Thanks, Samir.
Thanks, Shankar. I think since we've got a few seconds of Suresh's good signal, let's maximize it. So Suresh, if you could share from an investment point, as well as I'll add a add-on question, which is leading in that technology and digitization is a very key theme going forward globally, not just in India. How can Tamil Nadu benefit from this? And with institutes like IIT, which you're quite close to, or TI or EO, are there opportunities here that perhaps we didn't see before?
Thank you, Samir. Honorable Minister Vinod and Arun of SICCI, rest of the eminent panel, all participants. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll quickly come at it from three different perspectives of industries I have some knowledge and involvement in. The first is in education. I think lots of lessons learned during COVID-1 is holding us in great stead during COVID-2. Lots of use of technology and innovation. So while a number of our physical centers have gone into a lockdown, like the rest of the state, the students have an ability to continue their program online without missing a beat. And on the day the locations open up, they go to the offline centers very seamlessly. So the learning plan, the programs, lots of tweaks in technology have helped us to achieve. So all of our students have been able to go through these programs without missing anything. And most of these programs are for upskilling, skill development, and to get into jobs. So it is critical, as these are things that cannot take a pause in people's careers. The second one that I would mention is on renewable energy. I think from the Honorable Minister to the President of SICCI to yourself, there was lots of mention. As it's been characterized into a vital sector, it's gone with no disruption at all, COVID-1 or COVID-2. It would help the renewable energy sector, especially at a time like this, if there are no specific regulatory changes that can impact pricing. There was recent occurrence of a surcharge for open access customers and stuff. Some of that relaxation will benefit that industry very significantly at this stage. Third, I would come from a perspective of entertainment, both from production and exhibition. Obviously, lots of the multiplexes have been shut down across the country. We saw it during COVID-1. We're again seeing it in COVID-2. So some relaxation in terms of local body taxes, some relaxation in terms of the type of content one can exhibit in some of these screens. We had put this proposal even earlier to be able to telecast live cricket events and others in cinema halls. The current cinematographer regulation does not allow that, but if some easing is done, those are things that can help that industry sort of bounce back. From a production perspective, lots of productions have come to a halt. In quite a few cases, rightfully so. People have been impacted by COVID. It's been spreading among the sets. But there's been regulation that was put together in Hollywood when the production kicked back on, even in the midst of severe COVID-1 attack in the US. So if those norms are put in, the government has put in those norms, but my belief is the penalty that's imposed if somebody does not adhere are not punitive enough. So it's being relaxed, and that's sort of leading to a relapse of COVID, at least in that sector. So some of that could help. I've got a few other points, but I will share it as we go along.
So,
Thanks,
Suresh, let me push a little bit harder, not so much on what you need from your current industries today, but also when we look at some of the other roles you have played in TIE, in IIT, and some of the other leading organizations. Tech and digitization, it's a key trend. It's one that's shaping the world. We now know Silicon Valley as a major influencer for the rest of the world, whether it's the birthplace of companies in the IT, in the computing space, in the Uber stroke Airbnb. You can keep naming institutes that we never knew a decade ago, but now are mainstream on our what I call the most expensive real estate in the world, which is on my mobile phone. And along with the other, 4 to 5 billion smartphone users around the world. What do you think Tamil Nadu can do for tech and digitization?
First, I will sort of come at it from a regulatory perspective. Because of recent unfortunate events that happened in education, especially online, some of the unsavory events that we have heard about. But that apart, it provides a fantastic opportunity for the Tamil Nadu state to lead the way in setting up regulations for an online education. That's been spoken about. Most of it has been from the initiative of some private organizations that have tried to put some norms in place. The government has already spoken about it, but if something like that can be done, it will allow the state to lead the way, in fact, for the entire nation in setting up these norms and regulations. There are significant players in the state think tank that can contribute to this, but if that can happen quickly, that will be a very significant event as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned. From an infrastructure perspective, apart from just electronics and some of the others, if we can play a part in very enabling industries, that can make a lot of difference. So a couple of them are, while there is a lot of push for solar, renewable energy, all of us know that quite a bit of the modules, cells get imported. We make very little of that. There has been push from the government for the last 30, 40 years in setting up solar, silicon foundries in the country. Fits and starts, it's never really taken off. It requires a very significant investment running into billions of dollars. The gestation period is high. So it does require for the government to step in to give fillip. There are some efforts happening in Hyderabad. There was some effort that was attempted in near Gurgaon. Nothing much has fructified. But this is a space, if Tamil Nadu can step in, create a public-private partnership to ease over the gestation period that's very typical of that, we could lead the industry from the state perspective and also create a significant alternative to imports for entire India. Vikram Solar has set up a base not too far away from Chennai. So there are people who are coming in. Most of them are doing modules. So Tamil Nadu, if they can make that investment, get the private people involved, it can bring in lot of many different changes, not just for solar, but it could even be for microchips. It could at some point in time, as we scale up technology and technology transfer, to even chips in the mobile phones, which again, most of them are imported.
So I think that's a great segue. So if I move to Josh and perhaps after that, Vaibhav and Shankar, but first, Josh, if we not only talk about tech, but also bring in electronics, you've been a repeated champion of bring more component manufacturing to India and to Tamil Nadu. Is there an opportunity here? How would you do it? What advice would you give to the government?
I think it's very imperative, Sam, that Tamil Nadu and India in general takes a step forward in this direction. To be very honest, I think there has been a lot of effort over the last 6 years. I should say even very consented efforts driving this forward, and we've seen the needle move. And I think we should not let this pandemic stop this. The PLI scheme, as I mentioned before, is definitely driving things in the right direction. The there is, from a demand standpoint, not just in India, globally, there is definitely a demand surge of electronic devices. And secondly, you also have a massive convergence of should I say, the automotive industry. Automotive industry is one of the sort of pillar anchor industries in Tamil Nadu, and you're going to see a massive convergence with electronics. So given what is at stake, I think it's very important that we, as key leaders in Tamil Nadu, work closely with the government to accelerate this one. There is demand increase. Industry 4.0 is being accelerated now. It's like, I should say, it's like turbocharged right now. Everybody has been, over the last 15 months, accelerating their plans and automating things. I think what I would say Tamil Nadu should do is really operationalize the Tamil Nadu hardware policy, and I think that's really the policy is clearly stated that we want to hit $100 billion by 2025 out of the $400 billion which the government of India has challenged itself to do by 2025. So I think this 25% share of India's growth in electronics would definitely put us, back to the honorable ministers, from a number 3 state to a number 1 state in India. So I think it's very possible, and but we just need to operationalize the electronics hardware policy of Tamil Nadu.
Vaibhav ji, Shankar ji.
Can I go first? Yeah, thanks, Samir. So it is very important to create a kind of an ecosystem. So what is so important here is that there are emerging opportunities for Tamil Nadu. So what is that infrastructure support we are going to bring in? So today, if you look at Chennai, for that matter, we have a lot of developments happening all across Chennai, the extended areas. The connectivity between these developments and the core city is the vital element. While the previous speaker spoke about what is the kind of demand it is generating in terms of electronics sector, and also what is the kind of policy level incentives we need to bring in, I think it is very, very important to create a kind of an ecosystem where there is going to be industry, live, play, entertainment, all that had been created as a kind of a townships. So township development to focus on specialized industries, be it electronics or automobiles, is the core ask here. So what it means is that, okay, how we can establish these townships very close to the city, far away from the city. Today, across the globe, a lot of emerging dynamics are coming up when it comes to the town planning initiatives. As the previous speaker was mentioning about the importance of town planning, I think the town planning and the infrastructure growth coupled with the real estate development beyond what we are developing as an industry is the key. And the government should also provide incentives and the policy for a holistic development, not only looking at an industry per se, but to push developers to create a platform for the private industry to get into development mode as a complete ecosystem, holistic township, maybe integrated township. I stop here. I'll ask Vaibhav to step in. I think it is his cup of tea to create integrated township to address these kind of issues.
Thanks, Shankar. Samir, great question, but I'd like to give a counter narrative to this. While we have been, talking a lot about incentives per se, that incentives are important to promote industry, but I personally feel that more than incentives, what we need is how faster a company can start its operations in a state or in a place. How easy it is for them to set up a operational unit and go to market is as fast as possible. If the government of Tamil Nadu can go and claim that within 1 week you can do a go to market, or all the approvals will be there within 24 hours or 48 hours, I think that is going to be much more advantageous for the companies rather than looking at pure incentives. Because sometimes the incentives are there, but then companies take a whole lot of time running around to get a lot of other approvals which are required to start an operation. So I think what we have seen globally, if we look at it, three or four things which have actually happened in the space of industrial development and attracting new FDIs, is that one, they have actually decentralized a whole lot of approvals when it comes to setting up of factories or service units. What it means is that a developer, if you're doing an industrial park and an integrated city, why can't a developer have a special planning authority status given under the government norms itself, and government be a monitoring agency to ensure that companies don't have to go for their building plan approvals and other things to the government offices, but rather take it from the special planning authority status of the industrial park itself, and they're empowered to do that. That's point number one. I mean, I'm just giving you a few examples of how the policy interventions can help. Second part of it is that for getting the pollution control approvals, the EC, the CTE, and the CTO. I am not saying they are not important, but once the project gets a EC at a larger level, do we really need a CTE and a CTO at every stage? That's a question which needs to be debated. There will be views and counter views to that, but I personally feel that at least after environment clearance, we can get away with CTE. We definitely don't need a CTE because environment clearance itself is a very, very lengthy process to go through. So, these are some of the norms through which you can actually do a lot of interventions which are on the face of the industry and attract, next generation industries to come and invest in the state. The other part which we are talking about largely is on the investments, but we are missing out one specific link, is that the new Industry 4.0, as well as the electronic manufacturing, the solar cell manufacturing, they all need high power skills. The skill development is an extremely important aspect, and we really need to see a very robust skill development policy coming in from the government. How it really connects with the industry, and how industry academia really work together in building that skill development ecosystem in the state is going to go a long way in attracting new investments. Apart from that, of course, what Shankar, Josh, and other speakers have spoken, I think integrated cities and integrated industrial parks is the way forward. Greenfield developments are great when you are a very big company, when you really can develop your own ecosystem. But for larger part of the industry, which is dependent on OEM companies, for them maybe having coming into an integrated city is far better as compared to just coming in a greenfield location. And for that, I think government needs to be taking steps towards that. And my last point on that is, what we have seen over a period of time is that there is a sense of competition between private industrial parks and the government industrial parks, whereas the means is the same, and the result which we all ought to have are the same. So even an industrial park, private industrial park guy also wants to have a new company coming into the state or a city, and similarly the state government parks as well. So I think what we need to do is we need to come out of that mindset of competition, that why should Mahindra take it or some other industrial park take it? Why can't SIPCOT give a better deal and try and get a customer? Because what happens is, with the government having a very strong set of resources, sometimes we have seen, a lot of times we have seen the sourcing has happened, but eventually the deals have happened because of certain other pressing reasons. And one of the reasons for that is that currently there are two anomalies in the entire private versus government industrial park, which needs to be really sorted out. One is that the state government parks provide for up to 50% stamp duty concessions to the industries which come into their industrial parks, whereas a private park guy cannot really give that particular incentive unless and until it has been specifically asked by a company and approved by the government. The second part is that private parks give land on lease similarly to the state parks, but on the private parks there's a 18% GST which is levied on the industrial parks as compared to the government parks. So I think these are some of the fundamental anomalies which are there, if we can work on these collectively, I think it's going to go a long way in terms of creating good ecosystem and a very much more planned and welcoming ecosystem for the new investments coming into the state. Over to you, Sameer. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shankar. Thanks, Vaibhav. I think these were quite interesting. And I think it's been pretty clear that we are in a war for capital, talent, and focus, meaning that we want global investors, we want local investors to kind of like roll up on our doorstep. And the competition really isn't in the state. The competition is across states. So how do we benefit? And some of the opportunities we saw in the previous run-up or decade, Sri City has benefited disproportionately from, I think, a lot of the proximity to Tamil Nadu. Is there an opportunity to now stand tall and leverage the links to build even further? I think there are many examples of this, and all we have to do is run faster than our fellow neighbor, be more interesting, be more exciting, and we already have many advantages: a strong health system, a strong education system. We have many strong tech companies. We have, I think, fantastic electronics, automotive. But I think this thing that Shankar, you had mentioned about the global development centers, I think not a lot of people know that in terms of knowledge parks, in these outsourcing knowledge components, which are critical for IoT, electronic vehicles, which will be very critical for automation in general. Tamil Nadu and Chennai, but across, actually, it's Tamil Nadu that has actually been attracting a lot of interest from the heavyweights, and many of them have set up their largest centers of excellence in our state. How can we bring more of them here? Shankar?
Yeah. So it is, so already it's all about talent. So we have the best talent available with us. That's why, you know, a lot of these companies, a lot of these development centers are coming into Chennai. So when it comes to knowledge outsource, one is talent is very important, and the social infrastructure is also very important. Today, each and every city is focusing on one domain. You know, we all know that IT is being focused more in the Bangalore because it is providing a different kind of social infrastructure for the employees. Companies today are looking at three important aspects, be it a manufacturing company or companies who are into service sector. So nowadays, even after this post-COVID scenario likely to end, all of these things would end sooner, we'll pray for it. Post-COVID scenario, companies would look at employee well-being as the most and important element of their strategy. Number two is the growth opportunities, growth potential, whether this location in India will support their margin growth and growth as an organization. That's number two. And number three is very, very important. What are we going to do in terms of, you know, returning back to the society more from the sustainability standpoint? And every organization today is focusing on the sustainability goals they have, because their investors are behind them, and slowly and steadily all our funds are going to become green funds. So these are the top three angles towards, you know, any company who wants to set up. So if we address this, to how to address the first point, first one is the providing the social infrastructure which will cater to the employee well-being, and their employees would be happy, and we are going to address their livability quotient. Second, how are we going to address the growth? Either it is going to be the demand from a domestic perspective, or in this case, it's going to be the global demand. We are going to address it through the talent which we already have, coupled with the physical infrastructure which we have. And the third is the sustainability. So in terms of energy, today, Tamil Nadu is a power surplus state. So how are we going to bring power and energy more from a sustainable standpoint? So I think going forward, all organizations who are going to come into India, all companies who are going to come into India are going to evaluate locations and state based on three parameters. All other things like, you know, policies, incentives, and all other aspects. Anyway, every city, every state is competing with each other. I think these are the three elements we need to work on, and there should be strategies around these 3 points so that it should become a kind of a policy. And very, very important, Tamil Nadu should really do a kind of a PR around it, market Tamil Nadu from a global platform, maybe, hire international PR agencies to market Tamil Nadu with these three things as the backbone, Samir?
Thanks a lot. So I think as we come to the closing space of our discussion, we have some really great ideas on the chat. I think strengthening our metro corridor, I think Mr. Kannan, that was great. Obviously, startup incubators, linking them with academia. I think these are great ideas. And I think one of the things I've heard that is being consistently ease of doing business, consistency of policy so that good business continues. I think because that creates jobs, that creates industries, and that means livelihoods are secure. So if I just go around the room and in maybe 30 seconds, each of you could share a simple, what I would say, the 3 long bets that the state should take. I'm not asking about policy. I'm not asking about how do you stabilize COVID, because I think we have a very strong government in place now. They have done remarkably good things in their first 30 days. And we hope that as it continues to bring down the issues and challenges that we're beginning to see. But I think if you can each put yourself a little bit forward thinking, what would the 3 things you take a bet? And Vinod said it beautifully, and he took a punt on clearly the defense corridor was one of his strong bets. And it wasn't the only one, but that was one example of things that you could do, and you could do deep, because it creates so many jobs, so many industries, so many opportunities that lots of different groups will come together to make good things happen. So let me push back, and I'll end with you, Josh, because normally you have some deep insights, but perhaps we'll start with Suresh. 3 big bets. What should Tamil Nadu take big bets on?
Samir, I'll give 2. And both of which are close to industries I'm involved in, so so that it's relevant. So the first is on vocational training, upskilling, skill development. While the government, both India and at all state levels, has introduced the production-linked incentive schemes across manufacturing industries, I think it's critical to recognize that skilled manpower is as much a product that's in dire need as much as a manufactured physical product. So if a PLI scheme is introduced for upskilling and skill development, and if Chennai, Tamil Nadu is able to lead the way, I think that can bring a lot of skills back into Tamil Nadu the way it used to be before. And that can lead to a resurgence in all other allied industries. That's one. The second one is, if there are incentives that are given, including, rollback of GST and stuff for different companies which come to India to shoot for movies, to produce movies. If the approval process is very laborious in all of India, if Tamil Nadu is able to lead the way to create a single window for lots of production houses to come to Tamil Nadu to shoot, there are beautiful sites in Tamil Nadu where it can be done. And that would lead not just to production as an industry, it would lead to tourism. People get a view, take a look at India, they love it, they keep coming back. So that's another one that would be a big help. A single window clearance for production with rollback of GST for people coming from outside the state into Tamil Nadu to do it, and a PLI scheme for upskilling and skill development.
Thanks, Suresh. So I heard education, skilling, and I clearly heard the movie industry. How about you, Shankar? Where do you see it?
So I'm looking at 3 things. 3 R's would be: number 1, focus on affordable housing, because all industries are catering to different sets of population. So I think, can we build 50 lakh houses in the next 5 years, both urban and rural across the state? And can we provide right to housing initiative focusing on EWS and LIG population? That's number 1. I think affordable housing coupled with the rental housing scheme. In fact, India is going to focus more on the rental housing, worker housing, industrial worker housing, and all of that. I think it should come from the government, number 1. Number 2, very important, is how are we going to unlock the land parcels within these cities? I think different government agencies do have multiple land parcels unutilized. Can we put into use by providing affordable housing? The commercial developments and all other developments will support the complete ecosystem. That's number 2. And number 3, to provide better infrastructure access in the sense of industrial development, can we have about 10 to 15 large land parcels available for industrial development across the state? So Tamil Nadu state has got huge amount of land parcels. These land parcels of about 10 to 15 large, massive land parcels can be utilized for large scale industrial development across the state to have more of an inclusive development for the entire state rather than focusing on some pockets of the state. So these are the three asks I have, Samir.
Okay, Vaibhav?
Very quickly, three, very forward-looking things. One is to actually set up a very strong skill development university, which caters to the, all-round skills which the industries are requiring and looking at it more from a future point of view. The second part is planned urban development, and planned urban development will encompass each and everything what Shankar was mentioning. If you look at Chennai city also, I mean, the areas which came up 10, 15, 20 years back are also, kind of fully congested. So we don't have the room to expand and, even expand and widen the roads over there. So I think what we need is a very strong planned urban development focus for all the cities which we have in Tamil Nadu. And the third thing from an industry point of view, continue to focus on our strongholds of electronics, automotive, electric vehicles, and solar cell manufacturing, apart from developing defense corridor. So I think these are the focus areas which will set us up nicely for the future.
Josh?
The three things in my mind, I mean, last year we were, at least I was personally very motivated by Atmanirbhar Bharat. I'm sure there is a better Tamil version of that, but self-reliance in the ICT industry is very, very important, not just for this decade, but the next decade. We need three things for that. Number one is design in India, right? Not just offshore design, but true design in India has to happen. And I think this is a very important part of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The second one is actually, I call them Indian machines. And MeitY has formed a policy, a committee to develop a policy around this. Whatever we design should be made in Indian machines, right? So I think it's very, very important that we look at machines being made in India. There are a lot of people who do machine removal machines, but very advanced machines to be made in India. The third, of course, is multiple level supply chain. Today we have manufacturing. You see one of our factory floors in the background, and we do some advanced manufacturing today in India, but it's not enough. I think we need to do what we call vertical integration in this industry. Multiple levels of the multiple tiers of manufacturing which has to come here. And I'm going to challenge the Tamil Nadu government in hitting $100 billion by 2025 by doing all the three things. And all of these things are really clearly stated in our electronics policy. Please operationalize the Tamil Nadu electronics hardware policy. Thank you.
So I think we've heard some pretty straightforward perspectives in terms of policy suggestions, in terms of some bets. And I think that the government has an opportunity to be remembered for what truly matters, which is if you can build an industry, as Vinod has continuously fought for the defense corridor, and I think many of the institutions like SICCI and many of the other ones, I think that's a strong opportunity. I think the electric vehicles punt or the IoT with electronics manufacturing, I think if we can bring a big chunk of that to Tamil Nadu, where there is a natural advantage, port, talent, the final end users close by, which means that transportation costs, supply chain complexity reduces dramatically, I think is a huge, deep opportunity. I think clearly there are enablers, whether it's the entertainment industry, whether it's the education industry, whether it's the health industry, where we spend time with. And I think law, order, safety are all components to make that life better. But for me, it comes down to, I think, three themes. Make doing business great in Tamil Nadu. Number two, make living in Tamil Nadu fun and nice. We're not talking about the same fun at 12 o'clock, because I think most of the folks here aren't the ones who are asking about the 12 o'clock PM kind of discussions, or AM as the saying goes. But how do you have family safety? How do you have green places to visit? I think that's part of it. And of course, strong education systems, which we already have, strong healthcare systems, whether it's the government system, the mission trust system, or the private system, which we already have. How do you strengthen them? And the three long bets are clear. I think if we crack defense, we'll have a shot. If we crack some of these big global IT parks, that are the next generation around autonomous vehicles or satellite technology or the space race or just technology in general, where already Tamil Nadu has a very strong, it is known, in fact, as the center of India for software as a service. In fact, when I was in Silicon Valley last year, they actually said that this is the center of the world for software as a service. We don't think it's San Francisco. We think it's a place called Chennai in Tamil Nadu. And it's also a few other cities in Tamil Nadu that we're hearing about. And this was from a major VC who was of American origin. And I think if we make that easy, life becomes fun. So I think with that, and the third piece I'm going to say is people, if we work together optimistically, rather than always critically, we might have a chance. Because sometimes it's easy to portion blame, but I think we're not competing against each other. We're not here to say who is a great industrialist, politician, family member in our families, right? We are one family. If we make Tamil Nadu great, there is enough to go around for all of us. And I think that is what we would really like to embrace. And I think I would like to thank SICCI for inviting us to share some wisdom on a platform. I think you have an outstanding thought process in how you put these things together, because how do you make it optimistically positive with specific points that we can take short-term reality bets on to improve our life, but more importantly, what are the longer-term things we can do and build around our natural strengths. We have deep natural strengths. I think people forget the fact that more education institutions abound here across multiple sectors, healthcare, engineering, technology, than in many other places. We have many of the industrial heavyweights in this state. We have many of the global IT heavyweights in this state. We have the centers of excellence for India, for health, for, you can keep naming many things, for entertainment in this state, for retail. The most sustainable models, I think I find here. We have some great investment groups here. How do you build around this is what we would like optimism to build. But at the end of the day, optimism with some pragmatism and good government policy goes a long way. So I think with that, folks, if we can help, please help your neighbor, because as you've learned during COVID, sometimes when person calls you at 3 in the morning asking for a bed, if you can help them, whether it's at your hospital or the hospital next door, that is only good for that person and Tamil Nadu. So I think help your neighbor, help us go further. And I think I loved what Vaibhav and Shankar said a little bit, which was around if we can enable, whether it's the government or the private sector, to benefit, like we're seeing in healthcare. It doesn't matter, because we'll save lives, we'll make our lives better. So I think with that, thank you. I think this has been an interesting session. I apologize as the moderator for it running a little bit over. Even though it was given to us late, I think we could have still done a little bit better. So Vinod, next time I will try better. But that being said, I think thanks a lot. And we hope these are great points that you can take back to the government, and hopefully we can help them enable and make our collective lives better. Go Tamil Nadu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Samir.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for a lively interactions. We've got great points, and we'll be sure to carry it forward in our report. And I'd also like to thank every panel member. I'd like to thank Mr. Josh Faulga, Mr. Shankar, Mr. Suresh Kalpati, and Mr. Vaibhav Mittal for sharing their experience and investing their time in this event. And I would like to thank our partners. I'd like to thank Surana and Surana International attorneys for their support. I'd like to thank Times of India for joining as a media partner. We've had a few hundred participants joining in as well through our Facebook channel, Facebook streaming this is being streamed on Times of India channel as well. I would also like to thank JLL for joining in as our knowledge partner. And all the participants, I thank you so much for your time. And I would like to request you to share your thoughts, your recommendations, any other points you have by email. We would be including it in our report as well. So we will be releasing this report on June 10th, as our president had mentioned, and we will be sure to share this with all the participants. I thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hosting you all very soon. Thank you, and I wish you safe times ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Vinod.
Take care. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.